Hey, what's up, juniors? Welcome to the last part of Unit 20.5, FDR and the New Deal, which is going to be the last part of our whole unit, Unit 20, History of the Americas, the Great Depression. So we made it. Let's get right into it. So anything that's that big, anything that's that widespread, anything that affects that many people is going to have opposition. All right. So FDR and the New Deal is going to have opposition from both political spectrums, from the right and from the left. All right. The right is going to say that the New Deal did too much and FDR was a dictator. All right. And that it went against capitalism and it was socialist and it was evil. All right. The left is going to say that the New Deal didn't do enough. And there's still a lot of lower class people that aren't being affected by this. There's still a lot of African Americans and minorities and Native Americans that aren't being affected by this. The demographic that the New Deal helped are going to be white dudes between the age of like 18 and 35. So if you're not inside of that, you aren't crazy helped by it. So that's the opposition. Let's break it down a little bit more. So these are going to be four kind of players to remember. The American Liberty League is going to say that the New Deal did too much, that it went against kind of capitalist ideology, and that it brought socialist and dictator policies into the United States. The New Deal used pump priming, right? Government agencies, big government, right? Government agencies are in charge of allocating money to create jobs, all right? That overlooked the private sector. That's usually what the private sector does, all right? Right now, if I want to build a hospital or a bridge, a government, state government, whatever, federal government, doesn't matter, will have a bidding war of private companies, and private companies, whoever wins that bidding war is going to get the government contract to go out and do that work. All right. So not only does the workers for that company make money, but the company as a whole is going to make a profit. This is going to make it so that the companies are kind of left out of the whole profit thing. All right. And if they are making profits, if there are, construction companies that are given some of these government contracts, they're relatively small compared to what they used to be. So that's why the right wing is going to be against this. There are going to be a ton of political cartoons at the time that show FDR kind of dressed up as Hitler. He's a dictator. He's evil. He's anti-capitalist, yada, yada, yada. All right. So this is going to be, I'm just going to use my finger. Or not. That was a terrible idea. GHT. All right. That's the right wing. These three down here are going to be the left wing. All right. Now, this is a little bit out of order, right? Some of this opposition came before the second New Deal came into play. I wanted to group together the alphabet agencies into one to kind of help you guys compartmentalize that. And this unit is smaller, right? I just did it in this order. I hope you can follow through. Dr. Francis Townsend, all right? He's going to say, he's an old dude, all right? He's going to say, old people are not affected by the New Deal, all right? They are still hurting very, very, very bad. Not necessarily from the stock market crash, because they weren't too invested in the stock market, but the banking crisis and the subsequent depression is really going to hurt the elderly. And we need to do things to protect them every month. This is before the second New Deal, so FDR is going to hear this criticism. He's going to pivot. He's going to adapt. And then we've got Social Security come into play. So this right here, we're going to give this criticism a big check mark. All right. Father Coughlin is a radio priest. I'm not going to get into him. He's relatively unemployment. I think that he's full of poopy. That his kind of critique of the New Deal really wasn't a valid critique. He says that the urban lower middle class are anti-New Dealers, right? They're not being helped by the New Deal. I don't really agree with that. He said that it wasn't really justified at all. Huey Long, this is going to be a special one. This is going to be the one name that you all should remember at the end of this, okay? Huey Long is going to be a senator from Louisiana, right? He comes up with an idea. Hello? Oh, boy, this is going terrible. Share our... An idea called Share Our Wealth. Hopefully you guys can read that. If you can't, it says Share Our Wealth. All right. Huey Long, Louisiana. Louisiana, very poor state, very African-American state. When we get to next year and we get to the Civil Rights Movement, we'll talk about how the beginning of the New Deal didn't really help out blacks all that much, and they weren't really lifted up in society very much, and they didn't have New Deal agencies that really pertained to them per se. So he starts to speak out against FDR and eventually comes up with this plan called Share Our Wealth. Again, that's what that says. My marker is not very good on my screen. So essentially, this is the idea. It's going to put a cap of $1 million a year. That's how much an American can make. All right. Anything more than that is going to be taxed so heavily by the federal government that it's almost like they're not making that money. All right. And we're going to take the excess money over $1 million and we're going to shoot it down the line to the poor. All right. So the rich can only be so rich and the poor can never really get that poor. This is crazy socialist, crazy left wing. This was even too socialist for like the Henry Wallaces of the time. This isn't really going to ever be addressed. This is going to be give a big X mark right here. Never really addressed by the New Deal. If anything, it reminds us a little bit more of like what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were running on before they kind of withdrew from the presidential election. But it's very left-wing, very socialist, very kind of forward-leaning, and that didn't really work. The right wing would have never permitted that. Congress would have never permitted that. That completely goes against the Constitution of the United States. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness can't do anything to infringe those three things. A wealth cap would do that. So it doesn't really go anywhere, and he's going to be assassinated in 1935 anyway. These are those threes. We've got the father right here. We've got the old dude right here. And we've got Huey Long right here. I'm sure you can figure that out on your own. So this, I'm going to try to get through this really quick. I already did this video once and it came out to be 27 minutes long. So I'm going to, if I'm talking fast, it's because I am. I'm going to try to get this in under 15. So the court, as you guys picked up in your alphabet agency project, a lot of the alphabet agencies start to get overridden by the Supreme Court. They deem them unconstitutional. The two major ones are the NRA, which was a huge alphabet agency, and the AAA, which was another very large alphabet agency that had a lot of outreach. They said that both were unconstitutional. FDR, not happy about this. All right. Now, who appoints a Supreme Court justice? The president. All right. So remember that going into the next slide. 1936 election, FDR wins it. He did take some hits with criticism to the New Deal. He did take some hits with the Supreme Court overthrowing some of the New Deal policies, but he still wins in an absolute landslide right here. He wins 46 out of 48 states. I mean, everyone loved FDR, and he was going to win that election. So, moving forward, yada, yada, yada. The courts. So, how many Supreme Court justices are there from the very beginning of this unit? 9. If the 9 were overthrowing Supreme Court were overthrowing New Deal legislation, then FDR came up with an idea. Fine, you want to mess with me? I'll mess with you. And he came up with an idea called, wait for it, court packing. All right, fine. If 9 want to overthrow my stuff, I'll make the number 15. All right. So he goes to Congress and asks them to make it to change the Constitution and make it so that 15 people are on the Supreme Court. There are 15 justices in the Supreme Court. Who gets to appoint a Supreme Court justice? The president. All right. So he would be able to put like-minded people in the Supreme Court, which would essentially make it so that no New Deal legislation was ever deemed unconstitutional again. This didn't go over very well. This is going to be his first big L to this from Congress. All right, Congress is like, dude, absolutely not. All right, they're already calling you a dictator. This would actually make you a dictator. So they are going to swat down the idea of court packing. They are not going to pass this. FDR takes a big political hit for it, but overall, it's fairly overlooked. Not many people even remember that this was a thing, but it was kind of an opposition to the New Deal. This tarnishes legacy a little bit. The Roosevelt recession, easy. Easy peasy lemon breezy. I think that's a saying. Is that a saying? I don't know if that's a saying. So in 1936 and 1937, FDR heard the criticism, and people are saying, dude, you're spending a lot of money. All right, this pump priming thing is putting a lot of money into the economy. You need to start making cuts. All right. So FDR is going to try to cut the budgets of all of his alphabet agencies, things like the CCC, things that are working very, very, very well. So if less money is going to the alphabet agencies, that means less jobs. That means less people getting paid. That means less money going into the economy. That means less tax revenue. That means less of everything. All right. So the Roosevelt recession hits. We see this happening, right? And then we see that. We see a dip in the economy again in 1936 into 1937. It's called the Roosevelt recession. He's going to be like, dudes, this is your fault. You told me to stop spending as much money. You told me to stop pump priming as much as I was. If anything, this does nothing but prove that pump priming works. So what they did to fix the Roosevelt recession is they just refixed those budgets. They put more money into the alphabet agencies. The Roosevelt recession is over. Moving forward, that's the end right here. Overall, the New Deal. You guys, I just want to give you all a shout out really quick. In your alphabet agencies project, you did a great job looking up the historiography of the New Deal. All right, and there are historians that say the alphabet agencies didn't do a lot. There are going to be historians that say that the alphabet agencies had no economic kind of background to it, that it was kind of random thoughts and randomly put together, and there wasn't an economic structure to the alphabet agencies. There are going to be historians that say that the New Deal did exactly what it was supposed to do. There are also going to be historians that say that the New Deal was overhyped, all right, and it didn't do as good of a job as kind of everyone remembers it to. The two things that I want to say to that, two things. I don't know why I did this, but the two things that I want to say to that are, A, the New Deal does not end the Great Depression. All right. World War II ends the Great Depression. It's going to end in 1941, and it's going to be a very specific thing that ends the Great Depression, and we're going to talk about in our next units coming up. All right. The one thing that you cannot put a number to, a statistic to, is this one right here. In my opinion, this is going to be the greatest legacy of FDR. All right here. All right. That is going to be why many people say that FDR is our greatest president. If he's not the greatest, they're listing him in the top 3. I can almost guarantee that. All right. It's the hope. It's the confidence. It's the greatness that he reinstilled back into American society. All right. We lost all our hope in the stock market crash of 29 and how Hoover handled it. FDR is going to restore that hope. All right. There's this really good book. It's called Warlords, right? And it follows Churchill, Hitler, Stalin, and Roosevelt through the period of the 1930s into the beginnings of World War II. All right. And one thing that we don't really put a lot on is that the world revolted in the 1930s, right? The world went against the grain. Japan revolts. Italy revolted in the 20s, but we already said the 20s were like the 30s with him. Germany revolts. France has worker revolution. The world was revolting against governments in the 1930s. America could have very easily gone down that road, but FDR was like that pillar that we needed, that source of strength to kind of give us the hope that we need to borrow a quote that comes out of England during kind of this time period, World War II, but whatever, keep calm and carry on. And that's what America did, and we did it under FDR. So that is the end of our Great Depression unit. Hopefully you guys learned enough to be able to evaluate it. This is a huge topic. It is going to be on paper 3. It is going to be a question that a lot of you choose to answer. So hopefully these videos and these lessons come back into play again next year when we review. And yeah, I hope to see you guys soon. I hope you're well. And as always, be good.